I woke up in the early hours to use the washroom and accidentally overheard my husband whispering messages to his mistress. "Don't worry, darling. Tomorrow, this 7,500 square foot house will be all yours." At lunchtime, my mother-in-law received a call from the hospital. Her son had been in a car accident. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were frozen on the spot. If I had not heard it with my own ears, I probably would have believed to my dying day that my husband was a decent man. But that night, in the deathly silence of our home, a house of over 7,500 square feet, I heard his voice. "Don't worry, my love. I'll make sure she dies. The house and all the money in the bank. As soon as I take care of her, it will all be for you." Who was saying that was my husband? My name is Emily. I was 32 years old and worked as an accountant in a small firm in the city. My husband, Liam, 3 years my senior, had his own company. His business was doing reasonably well. We had been married for 5 years and lived with his parents in a large, custom-built home in the suburbs of Toronto, complete with a spacious garden, a swimming pool, and a 2-car garage. Anyone looking at us from the outside would say I had hit the jackpot. I had married a successful man from a wealthy family. My father-in-law, Arthur, was a stern man of few words, but each one carried the weight of a hammer. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, was a petite woman, but her tongue was anything but, always complaining about the children. In 5 years of marriage, the only thing that made me bow my head before her was the subject of children. "We had no children," Eleanor would often hint. "What kind of a woman are you? 5 years married and not a single child. At this rate, the family will have no heir. You should get that checked, Emily." I could only clench my teeth, smile, and cry silently at night, hugging my pillow. I had tried countless treatments, visited one hospital after another, and the result was always the same. "No problem observed." Of course. Continue with the follow-up. I blamed myself entirely, not daring to think that the problem might not be with me. In that house, the person I feared the most was my father-in-law. The one who exhausted me the most was my mother-in-law, and the one I trusted the most was my husband, Liam. Or so I thought. That night I was sleeping when thirst woke me. I reached my hand to the other side of the bed and found only a cold emptiness. The sheets on Liam's side were smooth, with no trace of warmth. I rubbed my eyes and looked at the glowing clock on the bedside table. 3:10 a.m. The house was plunged into darkness. The only sound was the constant hum of the air conditioning. I pushed back the covers, slipped on my slippers, and went down to the kitchen for a glass of water. The second-floor hallway was long and dark, with a yellowish nightlight in one corner casting a faint glow. As I passed Liam's office, I saw a thin line of bluish light seeping from under the door. Was he still working? That was my first thought. His company had a big project lately, and he often complained of being tired. Seeing him stay up late, I could only tell him to rest, not to get sick. I was about to raise my hand to knock on the door with the words ready on my lips. "Honey, come down for some water and get some rest." But my hand never touched the doorknob when from inside his familiar, deep voice resonated, but with a honeyed tone he had never used with me. "Don't worry, my love. Tomorrow it will all be sorted out. From tomorrow on, there will be no one standing in our way." I stopped dead in my tracks, my hand frozen in midair. My love? Who was he calling my love? My heart pounded, and a chill ran down my spine to the nape of my neck. I swallowed hard, held my breath, and slowly pressed my ear to the cold wood of the door. Liam's voice came again, this time lower, with a hint of satisfaction. "I have it all figured out. On that mountain pass on the way to the Blue Mountains. If it rains a little, the car will skid easily. The police will think it was an accident from losing control. No one will suspect a thing." I felt my hands and feet go numb. The Blue Mountains, a mountain pass, an accident. Tomorrow was our 5th wedding anniversary. He had told me he was taking me to a luxury spa hotel in the mountains, a place overlooking the pine forests, to make up for the years of sadness over not having children. I, happy to the point of tears, had packed coats and scarves, and had even told my mother-in-law, "Mom, we're going away for a couple of days. Take care of yourselves, and don't forget to take your medicine." It turned out that anniversary celebration was actually my planned funeral. Inside, a woman's voice came through the phone's speaker, low but clear, with a touch of coquettishness. "But what if she doesn't die?" "I'm so scared, Liam." "I don't want to go to jail," Liam chuckled. It was the same laugh he had, until now, only used in business meetings, but now it sounded incredibly sweet. "You silly thing. I've checked everything. In that ravine, if the car goes over, it will be totaled, impossible to survive. Once she's dead, the 7,500 square foot house and the millions of dollars in the account that are in my name, I'll transfer it all to you. You just have to wait quietly to be my wife. You promised me, right? Don't you dare trick me." The woman on the other end of the phone giggled foolishly. Every word, the house, the millions, all for you, was like an ice knife piercing my heart. It turned out that to my husband, I was just she. The house I cleaned with such care, scrubbing every tile and tending to every plant, was just a number on a piece of paper. 5 years as a daughter-in-law, enduring scorn, only to end up as the target of a perfect plan to be pushed off a cliff. I covered my mouth tightly, afraid I would let out a scream. I felt my back pressed against the door. Inside, Liam whispered again. "Tomorrow I'll give her a mild sedative. On the mountain pass, she'll be half asleep. If anything happens, it will seem even more like an accident. You just remember, don't leave any trace on the phone. Understood? Be a good girl at home and wait for me to bring you the papers to sign." I could not listen anymore. If I did, I would break down right there. My knees suddenly gave way, and I slid down the cold wall, sitting on the hallway carpet. The carpet was soft, but it felt as if I were sitting on sharp blades. In my mind, images swirled. Our wedding day at the luxury hotel, him holding my hand, looking into my eyes and saying, "I will never leave you." The times my stomach ached from the treatments, and he would make me a glass of warm water, saying, "Just one last push, darling. We'll have a child soon." The nights I waited for him until the early hours and he would hug me, apologizing. "I had a business dinner. Don't be mad. Was all of that real? Or just a long play?" In this house, the person I had always hated and feared the most was my mother-in-law, Eleanor. Because of her hints, because of her inquisitive gaze at my belly, I often thought secretly, if I ever have to leave this house, it will be because of you. But it turned out that the person who wanted to erase me from this world was the one I slept with every night and had breakfast with every morning. I do not know how long I sat in the hallway. The hum of the air conditioning and the ticking of the wall clock seemed to amplify in the night, stabbing at my ears. In the office, the light stayed on for a while longer and then went out with a click. I heard the scrape of a chair and familiar footsteps approaching the door. Like a drowning person who suddenly reacts, I scrambled back to the bedroom. My movements were clumsy. I nearly fell several times, but I managed to get to the bed, crawl under the covers, and turn my back to the door. The bedroom door opened with a soft click. I heard Liam's footsteps, slow and calm as always. The mattress dipped beside me. The smell of tobacco mixed with his usual cologne drew near my back. His arm reached out, preparing to hold me as usual. My entire body tensed. Every muscle trembled slightly. "Emily, are you still awake?" His voice was soft, a little hoarse. I forced myself to swallow the lump in my throat, trying to mimic a sleepy voice. I was thirsty. I got up to use the washroom. "I'm going back to sleep now. You should sleep too." Liam was silent for a moment, then he withdrew his arm. "Yes. We're leaving early tomorrow. Sleep." He turned over, his back to me. A few minutes later, his breathing became regular and deep, as if he were truly asleep. I, on the other hand, had my eyes wide open in the darkness, staring at the faint light filtering through the crack in the curtains. I felt a glacial cold throughout my body, but my mind had never been so awake. The mountain pass, the accident, the sedatives, the house, the millions. Wait for me to bring you the papers. Every word from Liam, every laugh from that woman was seared into my head with a hot iron. I could no longer cry. The initial tears had soaked the pillow, and as they dried, only a chilling coldness remained, spreading across my chest. A deep hatred and a painful lucidity. I always used to think that if I could not take it anymore, I would get a divorce, leave with nothing, but I would leave. I never imagined someone would not even want to give me the right to live. Outside, the sky began to lighten, shifting from a dark purple to a pale gray, dotted with the gold of the first sun. A bird's song from the garden sounded faintly. I remained motionless, pretending to sleep so I would not have to look at the face of the man who had planned my death. Only when a clear thought formed in my head did my body begin to slowly relax. I will go on that trip tomorrow, but not to die. I must live. I must protect myself, and I will make them pay for every single thing they have planned against my life. That thought was like a small flame igniting in the long night, warming my frozen heart. I did not know what would happen tomorrow on that mountain road, but I knew that from the moment I heard that conversation, I was no longer the submissive, resigned woman. I will live, and I will reclaim everything that belongs to me in my own way. The next morning, I did not remember if I had managed to sleep at all. I only know that when the alarm clock went off, my head felt heavy, as if filled with cotton, but strangely clear. Beside me, Liam was still lying down, his eyes closed and his breathing even. If I had not heard last night's conversation, I probably would have turned to wake him gently, like so many other mornings. But today, I simply got up in silence, trying not to move the mattress an inch. I went into the bathroom and closed the door, gripping the sink. In the mirror, my face showed sunken eyes with red rims and dry lips. I stared at myself for a long time and whispered as if speaking to a stranger. My phone was still on the bedside table. Last night, in the panic of the hallway, I do not know how I had the presence of mind to open the recording app and slip the phone into my pajama pocket. When I returned to bed, before pretending to sleep, I had stopped it. Now, sitting on the toilet lid, with trembling hands, I opened the audio file. Liam's voice played, word for word, as clear as if it were being whispered in my ear. As soon as she's dead, the house and all the money in the bank will be yours. I listened to it once, and then again. My ears were ringing, but strangely, my heart calmed down. It was proof. I had not dreamt it. I had not imagined it. I saved the file in a hidden folder with a random name and sent a copy to Chloe, my best friend, through a messaging app with a single line. Save this for me. It's urgent. Don't ask anything. I'll call you this afternoon. Chloe replied immediately. Of course. I'll save it. Are you okay? I looked at those 3 words. Are you okay? For a long time, and finally replied, yes, for now. I splashed my face with cold water to reduce the swelling in my eyes and stop my voice from trembling. When I came out, Liam had just sat up in bed, his hair tousled, pretending to rub his eyes sleepily. You're up already, he smiled with the same gentle voice as always. We're leaving early today to beat the traffic. I turned so he could not see my expression, simply replying, yes, I'm going to get things ready. No need, I've already packed everything. You just need your toiletries. If it had been yesterday, that sentence would have moved me. A husband who packs for every trip. Now, every I've prepared everything only sent shivers down my spine. I did not know what exactly he had prepared to end my life. I dressed in comfortable clothes and put on some light makeup to hide my fatigue. I opened the closet and chose a cream-colored turtleneck sweater. The same one Liam once told me made me look like a 20-year-old girl. I did not put it on to please him, but because today I needed to be completely lucid, with every detail under my control. When I went down to the kitchen, Eleanor was already up, giving orders to the housekeeper to serve breakfast. The smell of toast, fried eggs, and coffee filled the air. Arthur was sitting at the head of the table, his eyes fixed on the newspaper, as usual. Seeing me enter, Eleanor gave me an indifferent look. You're down. Eat something before you go. You don't want to get stuck in traffic on the way to the mountains. It's a pain. I nodded and sat down. Liam, who was a few steps behind me, pulled out my chair and placed the plate with the most perfect fried egg in front of me. Eat well. It's a long drive today. I looked at the egg, thinking of the sedative he mentioned last night. My heart skipped a beat, but my face smiled, and my voice sounded light. You too, honey. At that moment, Arthur folded his newspaper, took off his glasses, and looked at us. What time are you leaving? Liam answered quickly. Dad, I was thinking of leaving around 9. Arthur nodded and said slowly, in a tone halfway between advice and a warning. The roads in the mountains are treacherous, especially if it rains. Drive carefully. Don't get overconfident. One skid and you're down the ravine. The fork trembled in my hand. He mentioned the mountain pass, the skid, the ravine. Was it a coincidence? Or did he know? I glanced at Liam's reaction. He just smiled with a confident attitude. Don't worry, Dad. I've been driving for over 10 years. I checked the weather. It's supposed to be sunny today and the road will be dry. Don't worry. I'll protect Emily. The word protect echoed in my ears like a cruel joke. I looked down, cut a small piece of egg, and pushed it to the side of the plate. Then I took a piece of dry bread and dipped it in the yolk. Today, I had to control everything. I did not know where he would put the drug, but I promised myself not to touch anything that tasted strange. After a few bites, I put down my fork and rubbed my stomach. Mom, my stomach has been feeling heavy lately. I'll eat light so I don't get carsick. Eleanor glanced at me, about to make a sharp comment, but seeing her husband's look, she swallowed it and just grunted. Eat what you want, but be careful and come back safe and sound. I stood up and said to Liam, finish eating. I'm going to get a couple of things and I'll be right down. Back in the room, I locked the door. I took a small purse from a drawer and put my phone, passport, some cash, and the audio file, which I had already copied to a small USB drive in the bathroom, inside. I did not know how this trip would unfold, but I understood that I could no longer trust anyone in this house. Before going down, I sent another message to Chloe. If I don't call you tonight, open that file and take it directly to the police or a lawyer. Don't trust anyone. On the other end, a brief typing appeared, and then, okay, I'll wait for your call. I took a deep breath, put the phone in my jacket pocket, and went downstairs. Liam had already brought the suitcases down and was waiting for me at the door with a smile. Ready, Emily? Let's go. I nodded. Yes, let's go. In the garage, he opened the car door for me with the same gallantry as on our wedding day. I sat in the passenger seat, fastened my seatbelt tightly, and took a quick look at the cup holders, the thermos, and the box of gum. Anything he offered me today, I would have to think twice about. The car left the house and merged onto the highway. The morning sun in Toronto was already starting to get strong. Liam put on soft music, the same playlist he always put on when we went on trips, full of romantic songs. What's wrong? You're very quiet, Liam said, glancing at me and smiling. Are you nervous? It's the first time we're going on a trip, just the two of us. I turned and forced a smile. I'm a little tired. I didn't sleep well last night. Don't worry. I'm here with you. You're going to love this trip. It will make you forget all your sorrows. That I'm here with you, which for years had been my refuge. Today, it made me nauseous. I turned my face to the window so he would not see the disgust in my eyes. The highway was clear. Liam drove confidently, occasionally turning to ask, "Do you want some water?" I shook my head. "No, thanks. I don't want to have to stop on the road." He did not insist. A while later, he opened the glove compartment, took out 2 white pills in a blister pack, and gave them to me along with a small bottle of water. They're for motion sickness. A doctor friend gave them to me. Take them so you don't feel sick in the mountains. The pills were in an unmarked blister pack with no box. My heart was pounding. Have you taken any? I asked, trying to sound natural. I don't need them. I'm used to it, he smiled. You take them. That way you can sleep for a while and you'll be refreshed when we get there. I pretended to hesitate for a moment, then left the blister pack on the armrest. I'd better take them when we get closer to the mountain pass. If I take them now, I'll wake up halfway through. Liam looked at me, and for an instant, I saw something strange in his eyes, something that disappeared as quickly as it came. He smiled again. As you wish, but remember to take them before we start climbing. I turned away, hiding the hand that was clenching tightly in my lap. I knew I could not take those pills, but I also could not refuse too obviously. The sun was rising, the light was getting brighter, and the road began to ascend. On both sides, we could now see hillsides and small, intensely green forests. In the distance, the silhouettes of the mountains were outlined, that place where I had dreamed of taking peaceful trips with the man I loved. Liam turned down the music and cleared his throat. Emily, when we start to climb the pass, if you're tired, recline your seat and get some sleep. Really, I hope this trip is a new beginning for us. A new beginning. He said it with such sincerity that if it were not for the audio file in my pocket, I might have believed him. I did not answer immediately. A while later, I asked in a casual voice, "Liam, if something ever happened to me, what would you do?" Liam seemed to tense for a moment over the steering wheel, then he laughed. What a thing to say. If something happened to you, what would I have to live for? Come on, don't say silly things. I looked at his profile, feeling a strange sensation, as if I were sitting next to a complete stranger. The face was familiar, but his inside was so dark I could not recognize it. The car started to leave the main highway for a smaller regional road. The sign indicating Blue Mountain 120 kilometers appeared and was left behind. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out and saw 3 words on the screen. Mom-in-law. Why was she calling me at this hour? I looked at Liam. It's Mom. Answer it. Put it on speaker if you want, he said, his eyes fixed on the road. I pressed the accept button and activated the speaker. Yes, Mom. On the other side, it was not her usual complaining voice, but a muffled sob and background noise that sounded like a hospital. Emily, is that you, dear? Where are you? Are you with Liam? I was startled. Yes, Mom, we're on our way to the mountains. We just left the city. What's wrong? My mother-in-law's voice broke. Oh my God, how could this have happened? The hospital. They just called me from the hospital. They say my son, that Liam, has been in a car accident and has died. They told me to come and identify the body. Emily, what's happening? What? I was frozen. The phone almost slipped from my hands. Beside me, Liam slammed on the brakes. The car screeched, skidded, and came to an abrupt halt on the shoulder. We both lurched forward. He snatched the phone from my hand, his face as pale as wax. Mom, what are you saying? I'm right here. Who died? What accident, Mom? Don't be ridiculous. Eleanor's sobs grew louder, mixed with people's voices and a hospital's public address system. They called me. They gave me his full name and the car's license plate. They say my son Liam crashed and the car caught fire. Emily. Liam. Oh my God. I turned to look at Liam. I saw the veins pop on his forehead and his hands grip the phone until his knuckles turned white. Name. License plate. They were confirming it was Liam while he was sitting next to me in another car, facing the news of his own death. In that instant, a chilling thought ran through my mind. The plan to kill me on the mountain pass seemed to have hit a snag, and the first to be declared dead was him. Liam was still holding the phone to his ear, his face pale and his lips trembling. Mom, listen to me. I'm in the car. I haven't had an accident. Calm down. But on the other end, Eleanor's voice was a chaotic mess, mixed with the murmur of people and the sound of hurried footsteps. They gave me his full name, the car's license plate. A car that's in your name. The doctor is waiting. Dad is on his way there now. Oh my God. The call ended abruptly. The air inside the car became so thick it felt as if someone had just thrown a bucket of ice water in the middle of the day. The car's engine was still running with a slight rattle, but the two of us were petrified. Liam turned to look at me with an expression of bewilderment I had never seen before. Emily, did you hear what Mom said? Who died? I looked at him, feeling a mixture of coldness and a cruel lucidity. I answered slowly. I heard perfectly. She said that you died. Liam let out a dry laugh, a sound that got stuck in his throat. What nonsense. I'm sitting right here. How can I be dead? He started the car and floored the accelerator. The car pulled off the shoulder, but barely went a few meters before slowing down and stopping again. His hands began to shake, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Impossible. It can't be a coincidence like that. I looked at his profile with a frozen heart. The man who last night was calmly planning how to kill me in a ravine was now terrified by the news of his own death. An idea sparked in my mind, clear as water. Someone had beaten him to it, and that someone was either the woman on the phone or someone from his own family. I feigned a trembling voice. Maybe Mom misunderstood. Maybe just the name and part of the license plate matched. Liam nodded repeatedly, as if clinging to a last hope. Yes, that's it. It has to be a coincidence. It can't all be the same. Nothing has happened to me. But even he did not seem to believe his own words. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. It was a call from a hospital's internal number. Liam looked at the screen. His hand paused for a moment in the air, and then he answered. Hello. On the other end, a serious male voice. Mr. Liam, this is the emergency room doctor at Provincial General Hospital. Excuse me, could you come here immediately? We have a victim from a traffic accident, and all the vehicle's documentation is in your name. Your family has just arrived for the identification. Liam stiffened, his voice breaking. That's me. I'm talking to you right now. I haven't had an accident. What are you talking about? The doctor on the other end paused, then said slowly, We are calling based on the vehicle's registration information. The victim is severely burned. Identification is very difficult. The family insists the victim is their son. That is, you. If you are alive and somewhere else, you must come to the hospital immediately to clarify the situation. The call ended in a suffocating silence. Liam dropped the phone, his gaze lost in front of him, his chest rising and falling heavily, as if he could not breathe. I clearly saw cold sweat beading on his forehead. Emily, someone is using my car. I looked at him, feeling a shiver. The crashed car was in his name. The person dead inside was so burned they could not be recognized. And at the hospital, his family already assumed it was him. Someone had arranged a substitute death for him. At that moment, I remembered the words Liam said to that woman last night. In that ravine, if the car goes over, it will be totaled. Impossible to survive. A perfect plan. Only the person who had gone into the ravine was not me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice as normal as possible. So what are you going to do now? Liam gritted his teeth, his face turning icy. We have to go back to the hospital right now. I can't let this become a reality. The car made an immediate U-turn. The road to the mountains, which we had just started to travel, was left behind. The vehicle accelerated, the engine roaring with urgency. There was no more soft music inside, only the sound of the engine and the beating of our hearts. On the way back, Liam did not stop making calls. He called my mother-in-law, but no one answered. He called my father-in-law, but the phone was off. He called his personal driver, but the number was unavailable. He even called the other woman, but only heard the message that the phone was off or out of coverage. Each unanswered call was like a dagger, deepening the anxiety in his eyes. I remained silent beside him, my mind in a turmoil. A series of questions assailed me. Who had killed Liam on paper? Where did this crashed car come from? Who was the dead person? And most importantly, if Liam had been declared dead, was his plan to kill me in the mountains still on, or was I now also part of a much larger trap? As we approached the hospital, the traffic of people and ambulances was much denser. From a distance, I saw the figure of Eleanor sitting on a plastic chair in front of the emergency entrance, her hair disheveled, her hands on her head. Beside her, Arthur, with a pale face and slumped shoulders as if carrying a heavy burden. Liam stopped short, opened the door, and ran out of the car. I followed him. "Dad! Mom!" he shouted. Eleanor suddenly looked up. The moment she saw Liam standing in front of her, she froze as if struck by lightning. Her eyes widened. Her lips trembled. Liam, my God!" She staggered to her feet and ran to embrace her son, crying and hitting his back. "Are you really alive? Then who? Who is in there?" Arthur also approached, his usually stern eyes now red. He put a hand on Liam's shoulder, his voice hoarse. "If you are here, it means the one in there is not you." Liam nodded, his face tense. "Nothing happened to me, Dad, but it's clear someone used my car to cause an accident." I stayed a little further back, watching the parents embrace their son in tears. I felt no warmth, only a coldness that intensified. I understood that at that moment, for them, Liam's life was everything. I was still a stranger, an outsider daughter-in-law. The attending doctor from before came out, looked at Liam, and then at his report with an astonished expression. "Are you Liam?" Liam nodded. The doctor let out a long sigh. Then the person in the ER is not you, but all the car's documentation, the driver's license, everything is in your name. It's possible they are fake documents or that someone deliberately set the scene." Eleanor collapsed again, her voice broken. Then, does someone want to harm my son?" The doctor did not answer directly, only saying that the matter required police intervention. Hearing the word police, I saw Liam flinch slightly. A shadow of unease crossed his gaze, but he quickly regained his composure. However, I had seen it. I understood that if there was a thorough investigation, not only would the fake accident come to light, but sooner or later someone would discover his plan in the mountains. The police did not take long to arrive. They cordoned off the area of the burned car, took pictures, and collected statements. They invited Liam into a private room for questioning. Before he went, he turned and looked at me. His gaze was no longer the kind one from the morning, nor the bewildered one from when he received the news. In his eyes, I saw a cold calculation beginning to re-emerge. Suddenly, I understood. For him, this game of life and death had just begun. While Liam was giving his statement to the police, I stayed with his parents in the hallway. Eleanor still had not fully recovered and was gripping my hand tightly, her voice choked. "Dear, you saw everything. We almost lost my son." I looked at her trembling hand, feeling a deep irony. Last night, the same son she now held had planned every step to lead me to my death. But I said nothing, only replied softly, "Yes, Mom, everything will be cleared up." At the end of the hallway, the emergency room door opened and a gurney covered with a white sheet was wheeled out. Under that sheet was the person who had died in Liam's place. I followed the gurney with my eyes, feeling a paralyzing cold. Who was that person? Why did they have to die like that? And was their death directly related to the woman on the phone? At that moment, I had a certainty. Since Liam was declared dead, the fate of all of us had taken a different turn, and that trip to the mountains, left halfway, had not only not ended, but would trigger a series of much more terrible events. I looked at the door of the room where Liam was with the police and thought to myself, "You wanted me to die in a ravine, but now you are the one at a crossroads of life and death." Liam was in the room with the police for almost an hour before he came out. When the door opened, I looked up and met his gaze. The initial confusion had vanished, replaced by a forced calm, that of someone trying to regain control. My father-in-law jumped to his feet. "What happened, son? What did the police say?" Liam shook his head, his voice hoarse. "They just took the initial statement. Dad, the car is in my name. The documents too, so they need to verify everything very carefully. They haven't reached any conclusions yet." My mother-in-law gripped his hand tightly. "So, who is the dead person, son?" Liam lowered his head in silence for a few seconds before answering. "We don't know, Mom. The body is almost unrecognizable from the fire. We have to wait for the DNA test." Hearing that, I saw Eleanor collapse into her chair, her face as pale as if all the blood had been drained from it. I went over to support her. The moment my hand touched hers, I felt a strange compassion. Compassion for a mother on the verge of losing her son, without knowing that same son had planned to take her daughter-in-law's life. The police suggested that Liam not leave the city temporarily to cooperate with the investigation. The trip to the mountains was officially canceled. Liam drove back home. The car was slower than on the way there, and the atmosphere inside was heavy. No one said a word. When we arrived, the spacious house felt strangely cold. As soon as the door closed, my mother-in-law sank onto the sofa, pressing a hand to her forehead and murmuring, "Oh my God, what is happening? What is all this?" My father-in-law, leaning on the back of the sofa, told Liam in a grave voice, "Go upstairs and rest, son. Your mother is very upset. We'll talk about whatever it is tomorrow." Liam nodded and turned to me. "Emily, you go up and rest too. You must be exhausted." I looked at him and nodded slightly, saying nothing. When I reached the bedroom and closed the door, I felt my strength leave me. I leaned against the door and slid down until I was sitting on the floor. In a single morning, everything had been turned upside down. His plan to kill me had not been executed because he himself had been declared dead by a substitute. I understood that what I knew was only the tip of the iceberg. Behind Liam, behind the woman on the phone, there was another hand, more discreet, more cruel, and willing to kill to achieve its goal. The phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Chloe. "I listened to the file you sent me. Emily, where are you? Did something happen?" I swallowed, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm not dead yet, but everything is a mess. I'll call you tonight and tell you everything. Be very careful, Emily. What you sent me is no joke." I hung up, put the phone away, and went into the bathroom. In the mirror, it was still me, but my gaze was different. It was no longer that of a gullible, submissive, and scared woman. Now, in my eyes, there was a vigilance that never rested. I had just changed when I heard a knock on the door. "Emily!" It was my mother-in-law's voice. I opened the door. She stood there with swollen eyes and a cup of hot tea in her hand. "Drink this, dear. You haven't eaten anything all day." I took the cup, saying in a low voice, "Thanks, Mom." She looked at me for a long time and suddenly burst into tears. "Emily, I almost lost my son. I really thought Liam was dead." I stood motionless, the liquid in the cup trembling with my hand. "Mom, if the person in the accident today had been me, what would you think?" The question slipped out, surprising myself. Eleanor froze for a second, then shook her head. "What are you saying? Liam and you are husband and wife. It's a tragedy. I dare not even think about it." Her answer was ambiguous. I understood that in her heart, her son would always be the center. I, though I had been her daughter-in-law for 5 years, would always be on the periphery. She put a hand on my shoulder. "Now, get some rest. These days are going to be very complicated for the family." She turned and left. I watched her go, with a sense of emptiness. Dinner was served, but almost no one ate. My father-in-law took a couple of bites and put down his cutlery. My mother-in-law was absent-minded, sighing from time to time. Liam kept his eyes on his phone, constantly receiving and making calls. I noticed that every time the phone rang, his expression tensed. When he thought no one was watching, he would go out onto the balcony and talk for a long time. Around 9, he came back to the room. As soon as he closed the door, he approached me. Instinctively, I took a step back. "Emily, were you very scared today?" he asked in a deep voice, trying to show concern. I looked at him, struggling to remain calm. Anyone would be scared to hear their husband has died. He sighed, putting a hand to his forehead. "I never thought the day would come when I would receive the news of my own death. Emily, it seems someone is after me." A bitter smile formed in my mind. It was not that someone was after him. It was that he himself had started this game. But aloud, I only said, "I just hope everything is cleared up soon. I'm very tired." Liam looked at me. His eyes darkened for an instant, and then he nodded. "Rest." That night I did not sleep. The wind whispered in the garden, and the chirping of insects increased my anxiety. Through the window, I saw that the light on his office balcony was still on. He was awake again. Around 1 a.m. My phone vibrated softly. It was a message from an unknown number. "If you want to know who died in your husband's place, tomorrow at 7 a.m. at the coffee shop across from the hospital, come alone. Don't tell anyone." My heart sank. I read the message several times. In my mind, the face of the woman from the call appeared, but my gut told me that the person who sent the message was not her. I looked towards Liam. The light from the balcony cast a thin line into the room. He was still absorbed in his secret calls, unaware that another door to this story was about to open. I deleted the message, put the phone away, and closed my eyes. I no longer felt a vague fear, but a cold expectation. I knew that starting tomorrow, I would not only be the prey, I would also begin to hunt. The next morning, I woke up at 5, when the sky was still covered in mist, and the air in the room was unusually cold. Beside me, Liam was still sleeping with his back to me. His face, in the dim light, looked peaceful, as if the terrible news of his death had never happened. If it were not for the message on my phone, I would have wondered if everything yesterday was real or just a nightmare. I got out of bed silently, my steps stealthy so as not to wake him. In the bathroom, I washed my face for a long time to keep myself awake. The unknown message appeared on the screen again. 7, alone, at the coffee shop across from the hospital, not a word more. Whoever sent it knew my schedule. They knew I was near the hospital. I clutched the phone. If I did not go, I might never know who died in Liam's place. If I went, I was not sure I would come back in one piece. I put on simple clothes, a light jacket, and left with my purse. In the kitchen, my mother-in-law was already up, making tea. When she saw me, she looked up. "Where are you going so early?" I tilted my head, my voice soft. "I'm going to buy something for breakfast." She nodded without asking further questions. Probably, in her mind, there was only room for worry about her son. I left the house in the pale dawn light, my heart beating faster with every step. The coffee shop was right across from the hospital. It was small and almost empty. I chose a table in a secluded corner with my back to the glass window. The wall clock read 7 o'clock sharp. I had barely sat down when a middle-aged man sat across from me. He must have been over 50. He was thin, with tanned skin and a sharp but weary gaze. He did not order anything, just looked at me intently. "You're Emily." I nodded, unable to hide my suspicion. "You're the one who sent me the message." He slowly took a photograph from his jacket pocket and slid it towards me. I looked at it and felt my heart stop. In the photo was a young man with a burned face, but I instantly recognized the shirt he was wearing. It was the same one Liam had once worn to a business dinner. "The man who died yesterday was my nephew," he said in a hoarse voice. "His name was Ryan." I was speechless. "Why was your nephew wearing my husband's clothes? Why was he driving a car in his name?" I asked, my voice trembling. He gave a sad smile. "Because someone paid him to die in his place." The words "die in his place" were like an icy stab to my chest. I pressed my lips together, trying to stay calm. "Who was it?" He looked at me carefully and said slowly, "Your own husband." I felt like I was collapsing. Although I was prepared for anything, hearing it from someone else was like having my heart torn out. "What are you saying?" I whispered. "Liam met with my nephew last week. He had a lot of debt. The loan sharks had him cornered. Liam promised to pay off all his debts in exchange for a job, to dress like the photo on the driver's license, drive a car in Liam's name, and cause an accident on the mountain pass." I shivered. "Do you have proof?" He sighed, took out his phone, and played a recording. Liam's voice came through clearly, negotiating every detail with Ryan. I listened, with my ears ringing and a lump in my throat. "Why are you doing this?" His eyes reddened. "So my nephew doesn't die in vain." Liam was planning to use my nephew's death as a cover to do something else later. "What thing?" He looked at me directly. His voice became graver. "Yesterday, my nephew overheard him talking on the phone with that woman. He didn't just want to fake his own death, he also wanted to kill you." I closed my eyes tightly, my breath catching. Ryan's soul, his death, and my life, all had been tied together in a chillingly cold plan. "And what do you want from me?" I asked. "My nephew is dead." A look of pain crossed his face. "But I don't want the culprit to continue living peacefully. You are his next target. If you die, his crimes will be buried forever." I clenched my hands, my voice hoarse. "What do you want me to do?" "Work with me. Report him. Let's bring everything to light. I've already given the evidence to the police, but your testimony about the plan in the mountains, about the other woman, will be the key piece." I remained silent. In my mind, the image of my mother-in-law crying inconsolably at the hospital appeared, my father-in-law standing in the hallway, and Liam, the man who was once my everything. If I did what this man asked, everything would fall apart. But if I did not, Ryan would have died in vain. I would live in fear, and who knows, maybe that fateful mountain pass would still be waiting for me. I looked at him and nodded slowly. "Okay." He watched me for a long time, as if trying to memorize my face, and then he stood up. "The police will contact you soon. From now on, be very careful. Liam is not one to give up easily." With that, he turned and left the coffee shop. I was left alone in front of a cup of cold coffee. Outside, the traffic was heavy. The hospital was still a noisy world, oblivious to my own struggle between life and death. I returned home, entering through the door with the most serene face I could fake. In the living room, Liam was talking to his parents. When he saw me, he looked up and gave me his usual tender smile. "You're back from shopping." I looked at him, feeling a storm inside, but nodded silently. Breakfast passed heavily. My father-in-law barely touched his food. My mother-in-law hardly ate. Liam was more attentive than ever, serving me food, asking if I was tired. Every one of his gestures only made me nauseous. Around noon, my phone vibrated. A short message from an unknown number. "We have enough evidence. Be prepared. The first to be summoned will be your husband." My heart raced. I looked up at Liam. He was on the balcony, talking on the phone with a faint smile on his lips. He probably still believed he had everything under control. I understood one thing. This game was no longer a simple chase. It was a battle between truth and crime, between a woman who was once submissive and a man capable of trading lives for money and freedom. That night, when everyone was asleep, I stood in the room with my hand on my belly. For the first time in years, I did not feel despair about not being able to have children, but a clear determination. If I survived all this, I would live a different life. I did not know what tomorrow would bring. I only knew that since I left that coffee shop, Liam's fate and mine were officially on opposite sides. That night, I barely slept. The sound of the balcony door creaking in the wind was enough to make my heart seize. I lay on my side with my back to Liam, listening to his slow, regular breathing, as if the horrific events of the past few days had nothing to do with him. I realized that the man who had shared 5 years of marriage with me was now a complete stranger sleeping in my same bed. Just before dawn, my phone vibrated very gently. A short message. "At 9, the police will summon Liam again." I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it off silently. I no longer felt just fear, but the sensation of being on the final threshold of a chapter of my life. On one side, 5 years of submissive marriage. On the other, the cold truth about to come to light. Liam woke up later than usual. When he opened his eyes, I was already sitting on the edge of the bed, pretending to read the news on my phone. "You're up so early?" he asked in a sleepy voice. "Yes, it's a habit." He sat up, stretched, and looked at me for a few seconds before smiling. "You've lost weight these past few days." I did not answer. "I've lost weight from fear, from disgust, from having to act every minute of every day. You know that," but I only said in a low voice, "It must be from the exhaustion of these days." Downstairs, my father-in-law was already sitting at the tea table. My mother-in-law was also up, but with a haggard face and deep dark circles under her eyes. She still had not recovered from the shock. My father-in-law looked at Liam and said in a grave voice, "Have the police called you again, son?" Liam paused for a moment before shaking his head. "No, Dad. I suppose it will take a few days." I lowered my head to pour myself some water and hide my expression. I knew he was lying, and he did not know that I knew. Around 8, while we were having breakfast, the doorbell rang. The housekeeper went to open it. 2 police officers were at the door. "Is Mr. Liam home?" The room fell silent. My mother-in-law dropped her chopsticks. My father-in-law jumped to his feet. Liam froze for a few seconds before slowly standing up. "I'm here." An officer showed him a summons. "We need you to come with us to clarify some details about the accident the other day." My mother-in-law turned pale and grabbed her son's hand. "Officers, why are you taking him again?" "He wasn't in that car," the officer replied calmly. "That's precisely why we need to clarify it, ma'am." Liam turned to look at his father, and then at me. His gaze lingered on me for an extra moment. I clearly saw suspicion in his eyes. Perhaps he was beginning to doubt. Not that his plan had been discovered, but me, the woman he thought he had under his control. "I'll go and be right back." "Don't worry, Dad." "Mom," he said. My mother-in-law burst into tears. "Son, remember to tell them everything. You haven't done anything wrong." I was behind her, watching as Liam left with the 2 officers. When the car door closed, I felt as if the invisible rope that had been tightening around my neck for days began to loosen. The house fell into a heavy silence. My father-in-law sat dejectedly by the tea table. My mother-in-law kept praying and murmuring. I asked for permission to go up to my room. In the familiarity of my room, I sat on the bed and, with trembling hands, opened my phone. A call from an unknown number. I answered. "Emily. The police are questioning Liam. He's denying everything." It was the voice of the man from the other day. Be prepared, they may call you at any moment. I'm ready, I replied in a low voice. I stared at our wedding photo hanging on the wall. In it, Liam wore a suit and I wore a white dress. We were smiling happily. Anyone would say it was the beginning of a peaceful life. No one knew that behind that smile, I would one day have to testify against my own husband. At noon, my phone rang again. This time it was the police. Mrs. Emily, could you come to the station immediately? I looked towards the door. Downstairs, I could hear my mother-in-law's cough. I took a deep breath and replied, Yes, I'm on my way. I lied to my mother-in-law, telling her I was going to buy her some vitamins. She did not ask further. Her mind was only on her son. I left the house on my own 2 feet, without looking back. At the police station, they took me to an interrogation room. Liam was sitting on the other side of the table. When he saw me enter, his face hardened. He clearly did not expect me to be called. An officer said, We've invited Mrs. Emily here today to clarify some information. We hope you will cooperate. Liam turned to me, his voice icy. Emily, what are you doing here? I looked him straight in the eye. Calmly, because there are things I can no longer hide. The atmosphere became dense, like a slab on my chest. I took the small USB drive from my purse and placed it on the table. This is the audio file of your conversation with that woman the other night. Liam's face changed completely. He jumped to his feet. What are you talking about? An officer motioned for him to sit down and plugged the USB into the computer. The recording played, every word familiar and cold. As soon as she's dead, the house and all the money in the bank will be yours. Liam's face turned livid. His hands clenched so tightly that the veins stood out. I continued, my voice trembling but clear. The person who died in your place was Ryan, this gentleman's nephew. I told them everything I knew. From the message to meet at the coffee shop, the conversation with Ryan's uncle, to the recording of the agreement between Liam and him. With every word, Liam's face grew paler. Finally, he let out a bitter laugh. And you believe all that over your own husband? I looked at him for a long time. In that instant, the image of the man I once loved vanished like smoke. I trusted you until I heard you with my own ears planning my death. The room fell silent. An officer addressed Liam. Mr. Liam, with this evidence, you can no longer deny it. We ask you to cooperate. Liam lowered his head and remained silent for a long time. When he looked up, there was no anger in his eyes, only the desperation of someone who is cornered. I stood up, my legs shaking. Liam, I didn't want you to die, but I couldn't die in your place as you had planned either. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw a hint of something like regret, but it was too late. I left the room, my heart pounding. In the hallway, the midday light streamed through the window, so bright it was dazzling. I stood there for a long time, feeling as if I had just amputated a part of my life. I did not know what fate awaited Liam behind that door. I only knew that the moment I placed that USB on the table, I had officially buried my marriage. In exchange for the right to live, I left the police station as dusk was falling. The sunlight stretched over the trees, casting long shadows on the gray asphalt. I paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, as if I had to learn how to breathe again after ending a part of my life. Behind that door, Liam was still giving his statement. The man who was my husband, my support, was now a suspect in his own plot. The phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from the unknown number. Thank you. My nephew will finally rest in peace. I looked at the message for a long time and replied, I'm sorry it all came so late. There was no further response. I took a taxi home. Throughout the journey, my mind was blank. Through the window, the familiar streets passed by like frames from my life. The route I took with Liam every morning to go to work, the small hill where I once sat on his motorcycle as newlyweds, the bakery where he bought me the first cake to celebrate my arrival in the family. It all seemed so close, yet it already belonged to someone else. The door of the house opened. My mother-in-law was waiting for me in the living room. As soon as I entered, she jumped to her feet, her voice agitated. You're back, dear. Why did you take so long? And Liam, where is he? I froze. I had thought about this moment all the way, but facing it, I felt my heart tighten. Liam is at the police station. Mom, Eleanor paused for a moment, then gripped my hand tightly. Again. They took him this morning. Why hasn't he come back? I lowered my head. I could not keep lying. Because the police have new evidence. Liam is in preventive custody for further investigation. The words preventive custody were like a lightning bolt. My mother-in-law took a staggering step back and had to grab the sofa to keep from falling. What are you saying? My father-in-law came in from the garden and, hearing the last words, stopped in his tracks. Preventive custody. What does that mean? The air in the room became unbreathable. I knew that whatever I said would be like a knife to this family, but the truth would eventually come out. Slowly, I told them everything. From hearing the call that night, the recording, Ryan's death in Liam's place, and the investigation for attempted murder. With each sentence, my father-in-law's face darkened, and my mother-in-law's grew paler. When I finished, a deathly silence filled the room. My father-in-law sank onto the sofa, his trembling hands clasped together. After a long time, he managed to say in a hoarse voice, "So, he wanted to kill you?" I nodded, tears falling without me realizing. Yes, if it weren't for Ryan's death, the person on that gurney today could have been me. My mother-in-law broke down, crying inconsolably. She no longer beat her chest or called out to the heavens as she had at the hospital. She collapsed onto the table, crying like someone who had lost everything. My God, he's insane. How could he do that to his own wife? My father-in-law looked up and met my eyes with an expression of pain and sorrow. Emily, I apologize. I failed to raise him right. I shook my head, a lump in my throat. It's not your fault, Dad. I never imagined he would become this either. Suddenly, my mother-in-law looked up, her eyes bloodshot. Do you still love him, Emily? The question squeezed my heart. I loved the Liam of the early years, the decent man who held my hand, but the man who tried to kill me? I could no longer call that love. I lowered my head. Honestly, I loved him very much. But now, I just want to live. My mother-in-law collapsed again, unable to say more. That night, the house was plunged into absolute silence. I no longer heard Liam's footsteps in the hallway, nor his voice calling my name. Only my father-in-law's sighs from his office and my mother-in-law's intermittent sobs from behind her door. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, feeling an immense emptiness. On one side, a family shattered by a detained son. On the other, me, the wife who had just pushed her husband to prison to save her life. I did not know who was suffering more, only that nothing would ever be the same again. Around midnight, my phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. Liam has been formally charged with attempted murder and identity fraud in a fatal accident. Legal proceedings will begin in the coming days. I read the message with trembling hands. Although I was prepared, the word charged hurt like a tear. The next morning, I was called again to expand on my statement. When I returned, it was already dark. As I entered, I saw my mother-in-law sitting in the living room. She stood up and approached me slowly. I thought she would blame me, hate me, but she did not. She just looked at me, her voice hoarse. "Pack your things." I froze. "What are you saying, Mom?" She turned to hide her emotion. "This house is no longer a peaceful place. You are the wife of a man who is going to be tried. You will suffer a lot here. Go back to your parents' house for a while." I looked at her, feeling a lump in my chest. I understood she was not kicking me out. She was protecting me in the only way she could. "And Liam?" I asked in a low voice. She closed her eyes, tears escaping. "He will have to pay for what he has done. I can't save him anymore." I went up to my room and packed some things. Every object I picked up was a memory. The shirt he gave me for my birthday, the scarf I put on him when he had a fever, everything was now fragments of a broken memory. When I came downstairs, my father-in-law was waiting for me at the door. He looked at me for a long time and said in a low voice, "Emily, I can't keep you, but no matter what happens, you were always my daughter-in-law." I bowed my head deeply. "Thank you, Dad." My mother-in-law gave me an envelope. "Here is some money. Take it for your expenses." "I can't help you anymore." I shook my head. "I can't accept it." She pressed it into my hand forcefully, her voice breaking. "Take it. At least my conscience will weigh a little less." I did not refuse anymore. I hugged her. For the first time in 5 years, we hugged like two women who had fallen into the same abyss together. Walking out that door, I knew I was leaving not just a house, but a whole life, a shattered marriage with no possibility of repair. Outside, the sky was darkening and the streetlights were turning on. I dragged my suitcase along the familiar path out of the subdivision, feeling strangely light, as if I had just shed a burden I had carried for 5 years. I did not know what tomorrow would be like, but I knew that from that moment on, I was no longer Liam's wife. I was just Emily, a woman who had just lost her husband, her home, and her past in exchange for the right to live. I arrived at my parents' house late at night. The small side street was the same, with the yellow light from the street lamps on the peeling walls. The smell of late dinner and wood smoke mixed into a familiar aroma that moved me. In front of the door, my mother was sitting on a low chair, fanning herself with an old wicker fan. Seeing me with the suitcase, she jumped up, her eyes wide. "Emily, what are you doing here at this hour?" Before I could answer, tears welled up. I entered the yard, dropped the suitcase, and ran to hug her. "I'm back, Mom." My mother froze for a second, and then hugged me tightly. I felt her thin, trembling hand on my back. "Why are you crying like this? And Liam, why are you alone?" The noise woke my father. He came out of the house and, seeing me, stopped. "Emily," I dried my tears, trying to compose myself. "Yes, I've come to stay with you for a while." A simple sentence, but my parents understood that something serious had happened in my marriage. My mother did not press. She took me inside and gave me a glass of warm water. My father sat across from me, looked at me for a long time, and then asked calmly, "What happened? Tell us." I told them everything, from the night I heard the call, the plan to kill me, Ryan's death, Liam's arrest, the charges. With every word, my father's face darkened. My mother, beside me, gripped the glass so tightly the water trembled. When I finished, a suffocating silence filled the house. Much later, my father let out a long sigh. "My God, he dared to do so much?" My mother burst into tears, a muffled sob. "My child, they almost killed you. Why do you have to suffer so much?" Sitting between my parents with my head bowed, I felt I had walked a very long and dark path to finally find my way back home. That night I slept in my old room with the same pale yellow walls and the wooden bed that creaked with every move. Everything was so simple it moved me. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, Liam's face at the police station etched in my mind. I no longer hated him as I did at first, only felt a deep exhaustion, like someone who has just survived a great storm. The following days, I was called several times to expand my statement. My parents took me and picked me up. My mother held my hand while we waited in the police station hallway, as if she feared that if she let go, life would drag me away again. One afternoon, as I was leaving, I ran into my father-in-law at the door. He had lost a lot of weight. His back seemed more stooped. When he saw me, he paused for a second before approaching. "Emily." I bowed my head. "Hello, Dad." He looked at me. His lips moved several times before he could speak. "I just wanted to ask you, do you still hate him?" I remained silent. Hate him. I had hated him to the point of not being able to breathe. But now, after everything, I only felt pain. "I don't want him to die, Dad, but I can't carry his guilt either." My father-in-law nodded, his eyes red. "I understand. I don't blame you." He turned away silently. Seeing his stooped back, I felt a deep sadness. All parents love their children, but some children stray from the path. Days later, the police informed me that the woman from the call had fled. Gradually, her identity was revealed. She had been an employee at Liam's company, and their secret relationship had lasted for over a year. It was she who instigated him to plan everything, from the substitute death to my murder in the mountains. Hearing this, I was silent. It turned out that for over a year, while I was undergoing treatments to have children and enduring my mother-in-law's criticisms, my husband was living another life behind my back. Chloe came to see me on a rainy night. She hugged me as soon as she walked in. "You are so lucky to be alive, Emily." I nodded with a sad smile. Yes, I'm just realizing that. She stayed with me for a long time, talking about trivial things to distract me. Before she left, she took my hand. "What are you going to do? Divorce him, right?" I looked at the dark sky. The rain was falling steadily. It's no longer an option, it's a necessity. I knew that since Liam was charged, our marriage was over, both on paper and in my heart. One morning, I went for a routine medical checkup requested by the police. The doctor called me into her office. After looking at the results, she looked at me in surprise. "Mrs. Emily, did you know you're pregnant?" I froze. My ears were ringing, my mind blank. "What did you say, doctor? You're about 5 weeks along. It's very early." I collapsed into the chair. A child. It was coming just as my marriage was breaking apart, just as its father was facing prison. That night, I told my parents. My mother hugged me, crying. My father was silent for a long time before saying calmly, "Do you want to have it?" I placed my hand on my belly, feeling that incipient, fragile life. A part of me, and also of Liam. "Yes, he's not to blame," my father nodded. "Then we will help you raise him." I burst into tears. For the first time, I was not crying out of fear or anger, but out of gratitude for having a refuge. I had not told my in-laws. I did not know if the news would bring them joy or more pain, but I knew this baby was both a gift and the greatest challenge life was throwing at me. Outside, the wind blew and the rain fell, but inside me, for the first time in a long time, a small life began to sprout, fragile and strong at the same time. On the day of the trial, I attended as a victim. It was drizzling, just like the day Chloe came to see me. My mother held my hand from the moment we left the house, her warm, trembling hand giving me strength. "Don't be afraid. We're here." I nodded. In my belly, the baby seemed to move, a gentle reminder that I was no longer alone. The courtroom was not large, but to me, it felt immense. On the opposite bench, I saw my in-laws. She had aged noticeably, her hair almost white, and her back stooped. When she saw me, her eyes reddened. I greeted her with a nod. She nodded back slightly. Then they brought Liam in. I held my breath when I saw him. The man who was once tall and elegant in expensive suits now wore a prisoner's uniform, gaunt and with a sunken face. When his gaze met mine, he stopped. In his eyes, I saw surprise, regret, and finally, a deep desperation. I did not look away. I looked at him, calmer than I expected. The trial began. The evidence was presented. The recording, my testimony, Ryan's uncle's testimony, the forensic reports, Liam's final confession. When it was his turn for a final word, he stood up, trembling. He looked first at his parents, then at me. "Emily, I'm sorry." Just 3 words, but they sounded like a whole life breaking apart. I let greed blind me. I not only betrayed you, I wanted to kill you. I don't deserve to be your husband. I don't deserve to be a son. My mother-in-law broke down crying. My father-in-law closed his eyes, tears streaming down his wrinkled face. Liam turned to me, his voice broken. "Emily, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I only ask, if, someday. About the baby." He choked up. I knew he had guessed. "Please, let me know. Even if it's just once in my life." I neither nodded nor shook my head. I just looked at him for a long time. In that moment, there was no hate or love, only an immense void where he once stood. The verdict was delivered. Liam was sentenced to many years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder, reckless homicide, and identity fraud. When the judge's gavel fell, I saw my mother-in-law collapse onto my father-in-law's shoulder. He held her, the last embrace of 2 people who had just lost the pillar of their lives. I turned away. I did not have the courage to watch anymore. The day we signed the divorce papers, the sun was shining brightly. We did not say a word to each other. A couple of signatures, and I was officially no longer his wife. As I was leaving, a guard was leading him away. He suddenly turned to look at me one last time. In his eyes, there was no calculation or threat, only an infinite sadness. I turned away before the tears could fall. Days later, my father-in-law came to my parents' house. His back was even more stooped. When he saw me, he was silent for a while before saying, "Emily, I want to ask you a favor." I invited him in and served him tea. Liam told me about the baby. "I dare not ask you to come back or anything like that. I only ask that if someday, when the child grows up, you allow his grandmother and me to see him as our grandson." His eyes reddened. "He's all we have left." I lowered my head for a long time, thinking of my mother-in-law giving me that envelope, her trembling hug, her gaze as I left. "Yes, when he is born, I will let you know." My father-in-law stood up and bowed deeply to me. "Thank you, my dear." When he left, I stood at the door for a long time. There are bonds that, even when broken, leave a thread so fine it's not for returning, but for remembering. Time passed slowly, but with a strange peace. I opened a small grocery store across from the house, enough to support myself and the baby. My parents cared for me diligently. Chloe often visited and joked. "After the storm, you finally see the sun." I would smile, caressing my belly. The sun I felt now did not dazzle, it warmed. The day I went into labor, it was pouring rain, just like the night I returned home crying. But this time, my tears were those of a mother-to-be. When I heard the first cry in the delivery room, my heart broke with happiness and pain. A boy, my son. I named him Ethan, wishing for him to be a clear-sighted person his whole life. A few days later, my in-laws came to visit. My mother-in-law, trembling, held him in her arms. Tears fell on her wrinkled hands. "Hello, little one. I'm your grandma." I did not correct her. I understood that in that moment, she just needed to be called Grandma. I did not tell Liam the exact date of birth. I only asked my father-in-law to pass on a message. "Your son has been born. He is healthy. I will raise him to be a good man. Let's leave the rest of our lives as they are." I do not know what Liam thought when he received the news, but I knew my life, from that moment on, had turned a new page. I was no longer anyone's wife or the daughter-in-law of a grand family. I was just Emily, a mother. Sometimes at night, with Ethan sleeping in my arms, I would remember everything that had happened, not to suffer, but to remind myself that I was very close to death and walked out of it on my own 2 feet. Life can take a lot from a woman, her youth, her trust, her marriage, but as long as she has her life, as long as she has a small being in her arms, she can always start over. And I had. 3 years later, one morning, I opened the store. The sun fell on the threshold. Ethan was sitting at the door, hugging an old teddy bear and humming a TV commercial jingle. He had my eyes, large and bright, but his nose was identical to Liam's. Every time I saw that feature, my heart would clench a little. Then, quickly, I would tell myself not to look anymore, that the past was closed. "Mom, can I have cookies today?" Ethan ran to hug my legs. "If you behave and eat all your dinner, Mom will buy you cookies." He grinned, showing all his teeth, and ran into the yard to play with the cat. My days were now incredibly simple. Open the store in the morning, cook for my parents and Ethan at noon, sell a little more in the afternoon, and close early to sleep, holding my son. There were no more elegant parties, no 7,500-square-foot house, no fake handshakes, only the sound of my son calling me Mom when he woke up scared. One rainy afternoon, while I was closing up the store, my father called me. "Emily, you have a visitor." I looked up. At the door stood my father-in-law. He was much thinner, with slumped shoulders and almost completely white hair. Seeing me, he stood still for a long moment before coming in. "Hello, dear." "Hello, Dad." Ethan ran over curiously and hid behind me, peeking at the stranger. "This is Ethan," I said softly. "He's your grandpa." My father-in-law froze, staring at Ethan without blinking, his lips trembling. "You are Ethan," I nodded. Ethan shyly said, "Hello, Grandpa." Just that one word was enough to bring tears to my father-in-law's eyes. He raised his hand as if to pat his head but withdrew it, afraid of scaring him. "I came to see you." I invited him in. I served him tea. My father-in-law placed a small bag on the table, some toys for the boy. "Don't bother, Dad. It's not for you, it's for him." I remained silent. A while later, he said slowly, "Liam is serving his sentence." At first, he was devastated, But when he learned the boy was born, he seems to have started living with more responsibility. He has signed up for a workshop in prison. He says that if he ever gets out, the only thing he wants is to know that you and the boy are okay. I felt a slight pang in my heart, but only that. My father-in-law looked at me and said in a low voice, "I dare not ask you to forgive him. He closed all the doors himself. I just want you not to embitter your life by hating him." I looked up and met his eyes. "I don't hate him anymore, Dad. I just don't feel anything for him anymore." He nodded very slightly. When my father-in-law left, Ethan ran after him and gave him a piece of candy. "Here, Grandpa." My father-in-law stopped. He bent down to take the candy with a trembling hand and thanked him. His stooped back disappeared into the rain. I stood at the door for a long time. That night, I asked Ethan, "Did you like Grandpa?" "Yes, he was sad," he said with a childish sincerity that made me think. Months later, through my father-in-law, Liam sent me a letter. The handwriting was shaky, not as neat as it used to be. "Emily, I dare not ask for your forgiveness. I just want to say that I have understood what it means to pay for your actions. Every night in prison, I dream of you and the boy, but I know it's a dream I no longer have the right to. I just hope you are both well." I finished reading and folded the letter slowly. I did not reply, not out of resentment, but because I knew our paths were now different. There are things that, once broken, cannot be put back together. On Ethan's first day of school, he did not want to let go of my hand. "Mom, come with me. Go into class. Mom will wait for you at the door." He pressed his lips together and, with teary eyes, went in. When the door closed, I stood in the hallway, feeling like a small part of me was leaving my side. That night, Chloe showed up at the store. "Emily, have you thought about rebuilding your life?" "What do you mean?" "I mean a woman has the right to be happy a second time." I laughed. "I'm already happy." She looked at me for a long time and nodded. "Yes, happy in your own way." That night I held Ethan as he slept, feeling an immense peace. I no longer feared the night, no longer startled at secret calls. I no longer lived in a huge cold house. I lived in a small warm one. There are scars that never disappear, but you learn to live with them without them hurting. Liam was a scar in my life, but Ethan was the warmth that covered it every day. I walked out of hell on my own 2 feet, and now I was walking a different path, without luxury or wealth. But where I was free to be a mother, to be a person. 18 years later, on the day Ethan received his university acceptance letter, the sun was beautiful. "Mom, I got in," he shouted from the doorway, letter in hand. I ran to him, my hands trembling more than his. "Really?" "Yes, in computer engineering." I hugged him, and for the first time in many years, I cried like a child. That night, Ethan sat beside me on the porch. "Mom, I want to ask you something. What was my father like?" I was silent for a long time. "Your father was once the person I trusted most. Are you angry with him?" I smiled slightly. "I used to be. Now I can't be." I turned to look at him. His face looked so much like Liam's in that moment. "Do you want to see him?" He nodded. Very seriously. "I don't want to blame anyone. I just want to know where I come from." I took a deep breath. "If you want to, I won't stop you." The visit to the prison was on a morning of light rain. When Liam came out, I barely recognized him. He was much thinner, with slumped shoulders and premature wrinkles. But when he saw Ethan, his eyes lit up. "Hello, Dad," Ethan said, bowing his head. Just those 2 words were enough to make Liam break down in tears. "You're so tall. Are you okay?" Ethan asked. "Just being alive is enough." I stayed back, watching them. All the hatred and fear of the past suddenly felt very distant. Liam turned to me. "Emily, you've raised a wonderful son." I just nodded. "Because he's my son." Before they left, Ethan said goodbye. "I don't know what you did in the past, Dad, but I hope that from today on, you try to live better." Liam nodded repeatedly, unable to stop crying. "I promise." On the way home, Ethan told me, "Mom, now I understand why you chose to live like this." I smiled at him. "You don't blame me? I'm proud of you." Those words made my heart tremble. I thought I was just a lucky survivor, but to my son, I was a mother to be proud of. and that was enough for a lifetime. The day Ethan married Ava, a sweet girl from a humble family, the wedding was simple, in our backyard. My father-in-law came and watched from a corner in silence. During the ceremony, Ethan knelt before me. "Mom, thank you for raising me to be a man." I lifted him up, tears streaming down my cheeks. Living with decency is the best gift you can give me. A year later, my granddaughter was born. Ethan ran home shouting, "Mom, I'm a father." I held the little one in my arms, my hands shaking. Life is a strange circle. I was a woman almost murdered by her husband. I gave birth in solitude, and now I held my granddaughter amidst laughter and tears of joy. My father-in-law passed away a few years later. Before he went, I visited him in the hospital. I forgave him, and he asked for my forgiveness. Liam was released from prison. My father-in-law told me he had opened a small car repair shop on the outskirts of the city. He lived quietly. We never saw each other again. There are encounters that are best left in memory. One afternoon, sitting on the porch with my granddaughter sleeping in my lap, I felt at peace. I had been through hell. I had been on the verge of death. But in the end, I had completed a cycle of pain to return to the simplest thing: family. I am Emily. I loved. I was wrong. I almost died. I gave birth in tears, but I also stood up, moved on, and kept the light for a whole lifetime that came after.